Sox in the basement.
You know, I know it's a White Sox show, but I don't know how to start. I don't know how to start the week off without mentioning that the Bears continue to win football games and it's fun to watch. Like, I went to a BW3. If you're old, you know that's a Buffalo Wild Wings. If you're young, you don't know what I'm talking about. They used to be called BW3. Right. I saw a retro sign in the B-Dubs this Sunday that explained what the third W was, and I can't remember what it was. It was a word I'd never read before. You can look it up, I guess. But it used to have 3 W's in there. Look it up, Ed, while I'm sitting there telling this story.
Yeah, and there were 3.
There were 3. But anyway, we were sitting there watching on the big screen, watching the Bears. And it was just like an idea. It was like father-son thing. You know, he's 17 years old. I'm like, come on, let's go get some wings. Dad will drink beer in front of you. He wasted my money on some stupid Red Bull drink that they had there instead of just getting a pop. But I was letting him get whatever he wanted. And we're sitting there watching the Bears. And on that last field goal, I was convinced he missed it. Like, I actually yelled it out loud in the Buffalo Wild Wings. I was like, oh, no, he missed it again. Because I really thought Santos pushed it to the left side again, like he had done on the last one, which if he would have hit the one before that, it's not even in doubt. Because they would have been up 9, and the whole thing would have been over. Although, as I predicted in that game, at some point, the Vikings are coming back. We are going to be trailing. And then it'll only be a matter of if there's enough time for Caleb Williams to win the game. And then when they gave us 53 seconds or whatever it was, my immediate reaction was they gave us too much time. And you didn't really need Caleb for it because you got the kickoff return. But I don't have a doubt now at the end of games. And I would love it if the White Sox got to that level at some point where I'm watching White Sox games going, we're not out of this. We're coming back. I mean, there were a little taste of it this year. Some of these young guys don't seem to believe they're going to lose even when they're trailing late in the game. There were several times this year where you saw life. It's the young guys on this team. They don't know any better. The Sox can't lose that, can they?
No, and to your point, you're right, because, and I was on the text chain with you, and I think I even quipped that when Santos missed that field goal, it's just because Caleb really just wants that game-winning drive.
Right, and we got him right where we want him. We
got him right where we want him. We want to come back. And if you think about it, go back to 2005 and think about that squad and how many games they won by 1 run. And I don't have the stat in front of me. But, you know, there was a feeling that season that every single game that they were in, even a game like where the Yankees, I recall a game where the Yankees just absolutely blitzed John Garland for 8 runs. And then the White Sox came back and got 8 runs of their own in the first inning or the top of the second, whatever it was.
And you always believed they were going to come back because Joe Creedy was going to get a hit.
Right. It's somebody was going to come up clutch.
Right.
Okay. And that's one of those things where, yeah, if the White Sox can develop that and can have that feeling, and if these young guys can feel that going into every game, it's going to work out for them in some ways. I mean, the talent is there for a lot of these guys, but it's just a question of mindset. And one of the things I think has always held back White Sox rebuilds in this modern era of rebuilds where we've been in a persistent funk for a decade or so is that when they came up, they were convinced that they were superstars and it was going to be easy for them. I don't think this current squad was given that mindset. I mean, that's why Andrew Vaughn didn't work out here, I think, in a lot of ways, but went to Milwaukee and showed that, yeah, he is a viable major league hitter. He's streaky, but he's viable. It's because when he got here, he was the savior.
Yeah.
Just like Luis Robert Jr. was the savior. Just like Yohan Moncada was the savior. And Gordon Beckham was the savior.
He got a standing ovation for his first at bat. I was at that game. He's a standing ovation first at bat.
Oh my God.
Because of the hype thing. They have always overhyped their rookies. This was the first year where I didn't feel like they did that. Like the front office approached this very differently. And they were like, look, we're going to have a lot of young guys come up and it's going to take time. And we don't want that. And so again, that's another positive that I get off of the front office now compared to the previous front office that really was for 20 years, essentially, in that building. Because the Kenny era into the Rick Hahn era was the same era. So that's why it just feels a little bit different, even on how they bring up their young guys. And they got some decisions that they have to make. We're going to dive into it. Before we do that, I'm exchanging emails right now, and I think the next really interesting, and I think is going to be a great guest for the $1,000 guest bounty. Remember, if you can put on a great guest on Sox in the Basement, if the listeners at the end of the offseason vote that it's the best guest of the offseason and you are the person that put it all together, $1,000 from Cork and Kerry at the Park and Sox in the Basement going to you. It's the $1,000 guest bounty. And don't forget that Cork and Kerry at the Park is on the corner of 33rd and Princeton. It's for your pregame, your postgame, your in-game. It's a great neighborhood pub throughout the entire off season, and they have that location as well in Beverly at 106th and Western. Check out Cork and Kerry at corkandkerry.com. But another
That would be a great
$1,000
guest.
What? Who?
Somebody who can explain Buffalo Wild Wings and Weck, which is the answer to your question.
That was it. What is Weck?
A beef on Weck sandwich is a Western New York State delicacy of rare, thin roast beef on a Kummelweck bun roll, topped with kosher salt and caraway seeds, top bun getting dipped in juice and spread with horseradish.
So let me get this straight. Originally, the folks who came up with Buffalo Wild Wings thought it was going to be buffalo wings and a Weck sandwich.
Yes, they were going to go all Western New York, buffalo wings and Weck.
To the point where when we were in Champaign in the late 90s at U of I, it was still BW3 because they had the three W's in the title still. I remember that.
Yes, but I don't recall there being Weck on the menu.
They must have been starting to phase it out in the 90s when they were starting to move around the country. That must have been what they were doing. Now I know. Because whenever I see BW3, people look at me like I'm crazy unless they're from our generation. And they're like, oh yeah, there were three W's. What was the third W? It's a Weck sandwich? There's your trivia question of the day. There it is right there. Maybe they could put that on the menu. They should put that on the menu at Cork. They should do that. Weck sandwiches. I don't know if they're good or not, but I want to try one now.
Oh, no, I actually kind of do. It sounds good.
Sox have to protect their Rule 5 guys. We're going to get into that in a minute. I've noticed that since I started going back to voicemails and listener mail, we get a lot of it now. So there's no way I'm going to get to everybody's on the show, but I am going to try to work them in from time to time. Bob M. wrote us this week.
We're wrong about something.
Well, that happens a lot. Bob M. This is why I'm starting off with Bob M. here. Here it is. This is what he wrote to us at soxinthebasement.com. That's how you contact us. It's the easiest way to contact us. Bob says, I listen to your show. I'm a big Sox fan. You have done good points. You have some interesting guests. Here is my small constructive critique. Sorry, I'm having a hard time reading Bob's thing, but that's how he wrote it. Every opinion that you have, Chris, all Ed does is support and agree with it.
Well, it's not entirely true.
Every time you have an opinion on Colson Montgomery or Miguel Vargas or Lenin Sosa, it doesn't matter what your opinion is, Chris, Ed backs it. Sometimes it would be good if one of you had a different opinion to discuss the other side. Cheers. Now, listen, Bob, that is actually Radio 101. We do break the rules here on this podcast.
Yeah, we do.
Because if we had a program director, I'll peel back the curtain here on radio, and this will explain sports talk radio in Chicago and anywhere, but any sports talk radio you listen to. In the pre-show meeting, they bring up the topic they're going to talk about in every segment. And the one host says, I have a strong opinion on this. And the other guy goes, I'll take the opposite, even though I agree with you. Correct, Ed? That's how it goes.
That's 100% how it works.
Exactly how it goes. They will only argue with each other for the sake of the listener. I always hated that, but that's the truth. If you peel back the curtain on broadcast radio, that's how it really goes. That's why and on morning shows or on some shows, somebody's job is just to be the jerk. Like that guy's totally normal off the air, but he's supposed to be the jerk with the outlandish opinion so that there's another voice when you're on the air, so that the majority of people who are reasonable and rational will side with the host. It's all a trick. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's the theater of radio, right? They'll side with the host. The host will win the argument over the crazy person who none of you like, really. That guy actually gets paid to be that person. And then the host looks like he's smarter. And then you all at home are like, yeah, we won while you're in your car. Am I right or wrong about this, Ed? This is Radio Psychology 101. We learned this the moment we started doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, our morning show back in Champaign was supposed to mirror Seinfeld.
Exactly.
There was supposed to be a Jerry, a George, a Kramer, and an Elaine. And that's exactly how we tried to model ourselves after, because like you said, psychologically, people got it. And like, that's where they wanted to be. So I could very easily, because Chris and I we do talk about what we're going to talk about before we actually start recording the show.
Not really.
And we do somewhat. Vaguely. I mean, you usually tell me.
Our pre-show was me talking about a bad date that I had this weekend. And I don't even think we got to any White Sox stuff in the pre-show at all.
Well, there's really not much to say. You said there's some listener mail that we're going to talk about, and we're wrong about some stuff. And I said, okay, that's fine. And Chris went on an epically bad date, but that's neither here nor there. A lot of times, though, if we do have a specific point or a specific topic, you and I will talk about it. And like Lenyn Sosa or I'll stick with Lenyn Sosa and Miguel Vargas, because those are guys that are lightning rods. And one of the things that you and I have done more so than argue with each other for the sake of argument is argue with the rest of Sox fandom as we've seen it. So we have been defenders more of Lenyn Sosa, and we have gone back and forth on Miguel Vargas based on where we thought he was in his development. And finding ourselves in agreement sometimes is the whole point of it, is just sitting there saying, look, just in general, the bad taste in everyone's mouth over Lenyn Sosa's defense. Well, look at his offense, but here's what he is. Or the good feelings you have about Lenyn Sosa, keep in mind he's positionless. It's kind of hard for me to sit there and say, no, he's a good enough second baseman. He's better than Chase Meidroth. I mean, I could argue that, but
you would sound stupid because you'd be wrong.
I would sound incredibly stupid because I know, and I can't sell it because, Jesus, I don't believe that for a second. I don't believe Lenyn Sosa is a better first baseman than anybody else that they have on the roster. He's not.
But I do get Bob's point. And, sometimes you do just parrot me, and you need to do better. It's not me, it's Ed. And I completely understand, Bob, that you have a problem with Ed, and Ed needs to do better. Ed needs to be better at what he does. He did disagree with me the last show. You did disagree with me. You did.
I did.
You did. You because I was talking about like why Jerry wouldn't spend because he's got the possible work stoppage coming up, and you made the point, but that is why he should spend. See, the thing is, when you disagree with me, you don't start calling me names and get all out of pocket and start yelling like a crazy person because you're not trying to do the Radio 101, we're going to have an argument thing that everybody does. So I think that's the difference. There's a stylistic difference because it's honest between the two of us.
Right. And when I argue, if I start to yell and scream, I sound like Peter Brady recording a bad song for his parents', silver anniversary.
Well, here, I have somebody who wants to argue with you. All right.
Okay.
The next thing that somebody sent in is an argument with you. Before I get to that, real quick, I want to let you know that Hyatt Home Medical Equipment is going to help you switch to a new age of life, keep mom and dad, grandma and grandpa out of assisted living, and make it so they can get around on their own and live independently. They have stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, bathroom remodeling. They do all the big things. And then they help you out with the CPAP machine, or they have continuous glucose monitors. They work with your insurance, big or small, with 0% financing for qualified individuals. See everything that Hyatt can do for you located in Evergreen Park. See it all at hhme.com. It's not all going to be listener mail because I want to get into the Rule 5 stuff, but because we're looking for somebody to argue with us. We will have I found one. I was flipping through all the messages we got. Joe Santoro got my argument voice on. Joe says, okay, and folks, if you give me the whole name, I'm going to start reading them on the air. I feel like I should be able to do that. If you're going to say, because you can just say your first name. So I feel like you want me to give your whole name when you put your whole name in there.
We will skip the social security number, date of birth, and all the other
don't put your social in there. I'll screw up and I'll say it. Chris, it figures that Ryan O'Hearn would be a free agent target of Chris Getz. The two were together a decade ago with the Royals. Getz gets all of his scouting reports from his Royals buddies. Now, it's a long message, but I want to go in here and I want to point out that he says, stop it. If they sign O'Hearn to more than the usual 1 or 2 year deal, they give desperate trash bin players desperate trash bin players lately. Then it will be the new Benintendi contract, overpaying for mediocre stiff who clogs up your lineup. He's not a fan of Ryan O'Hearn. Now, I think not. No, he's not a fan. And his basic points, as I skim through the entire message, is essentially he's getting older, he's slow, he's not going to hit a ton of home runs, he's not who he wants. And I will say this, Joe, I agree with you. Ryan O'Hearn would not be my number one choice to go play first base for the Chicago White Sox in 2026. He's not who I want. There are better players out there. I think the only reason we try to talk up that like Ryan O'Hearn made sense is it's Ryan O'Hearn makes sense within a restrictive budget of Jerry Reinsdorf when you know you need to make some changes. And personally, I think it would make sense for a 1 to 2 year deal only with Ryan O'Hearn. I agree with you on it. I am not opposed to it at all. The point I was trying to make is the idea that if they believe that O'Hearn working with Fuller, because if you refer back to the Royals thing and they're trying to get him for his Royals days, well, that's terrible because he sucked with the Royals. But he was a much different hitter and a much better hitter when he was in the Orioles system where Ryan Fuller comes from. And so this may just be Ryan Fuller trying to bring a guy in who he says, look, I can get the max out of him and he's not going to cost that much because we have a restricted budget. Because if you think about what the White Sox are trying to do, and we went through comments that Chris Getz has already made from the GM meetings, it's not only starting pitching. He wants to add to his relief pitching. So his starting pitching, his relief pitching, corner infield, corner outfield. Those are all things that he brought up while talking with press at the GM meetings. And then he's got a fluid budget, which makes it seem like he doesn't know exactly what he's going to get. And all indications are that Jerry Reinsdorf isn't opening up the purse. So I think that's why we were trying to talk ourselves into the positives of Ryan O'Hearn. But no, trust me, Ryan O'Hearn is not one of the top 5 guys I want at first base that are available right now in free agency. He just may be the only thing that fits what they're able to spend if they have to be frugal because of the restricted budget. At least that's what my take is. Ed, take the opposite on that for me. Just jump in there. Take it.
Ryan O'Hearn is a golden god who deserves a 10-year deal. That's what I got to say about that. No, Ryan O'Hearn could be a steadying presence in the middle of the order. Uh-huh. Yes, he's a base clogger. Yes, he is not. He is getting on in years. He was much better in the Ryan Fuller system and the Orioles system as a hitter. And one of the points I think we were trying to make with the multi-year deals is that if you view Ryan O'Hearn as being a positive in the clubhouse and a veteran that you think will settle a young team down that is going to continue to have youth come up more so than free agents, then giving Ryan O'Hearn 2 or 3 years isn't necessarily the end of the world. Giving him 2 years and an option is probably a good idea. Giving him 1 year and an option is the minimum that I would think that he would do. Yeah.
But the option needs to be the White Sox option. That's the thing. Because what they don't want to run into is that idea that you have to continuously replace guys because they opt out after the 1 year. So that's what they're really looking for in a perfect world.
And if you look at the free agent list, I mean, just the free agents this year it's not an attractive group of players. I mean, it's a lot of guys that are fringy like Ryan O'Hearn. So again, you look at, well, what are they trying to accomplish with him? And I think what they would try to accomplish with a Ryan O'Hearn is let us have a guy that's in the lineup that is pretty reliable over the course of his Orioles career. You don't look at the Royal stuff because that was now years removed. Okay. Look at what he was with the Orioles. And if you feel like he is going to be somebody that is going to help out Colson Montgomery, is going to help protect Kyle Teal and Edgar Caro, is going to help, set the table with Chase Mydroth, however you want to use him, or just steady the bottom of the order. If he's your 7th place guy, okay, so that you've got somebody down there that's somewhat reliable or somewhat you can pencil him in. Yeah, 2 or 3 years isn't going to kill you, especially if his rate, if his annual value isn't all that much. And I don't think Ryan O'Hearn is going to be all that expensive. So yeah, I do see where there is a real good path for him to do that, especially because the guy that maybe everybody was hoping for, Josh Naylor, is staying with Seattle, and Pete Alonso is going to be way too expensive. And after that, Luis Ariz, we've talked about him as a possibility too.
I wanted him. See, I would take him over O'Hearn, even though he's not hitting home runs. I'd rather have him because I think that's the guy who had one little blip or he had a light year or two here, but I think there's still something in there where he can come in and hit for a high average, play over at first base, and you don't need the home runs because Colson Montgomery is going to hit you 40. Really, if the White Sox truly believe that Colson Montgomery is what we just saw, and the arrow's only pointing up, and it's only going to get better, you've got 40 home runs at short. You really do, if that's what he is.
Yeah,
if that's
100%.
real, if his first half season is an indication of, well, okay, he may have to adjust to pitchers. They're going to adjust to him. But this is like the floor because he's just made it to the major leagues. You can afford to have a guy at first base that doesn't hit a lot of home runs because you're getting so many from your shortstop position. So, that's a name that right there, that's a name that I believe in more than Ryan O'Hearn. I just see why they're talking to him because of the Ryan Fuller connection. I don't think it's the Royals thing. I think it's the Ryan Fuller connection. Sox in the Basement listeners trying to make the most of your money. Give a call to Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor. Located on the corner of 111th and Kedzie, but serving the Chicagoland area, Tom has a get-to-know-you approach and a do-the-right-thing attitude. He's been doing this for decades. It's all about knowing your options when you're investing and planning for your retirement, no matter what stage you are at. It costs nothing to check in with Tom. Give Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor, a call today, 773-779-0023. Edward Jones, member SIPC. There are a bunch of names that Chris Getz will be looking at this week. I believe Tuesday, the day this episode comes out is when he's got to get out who he's going to be protecting for the Rule 5 draft. Right. It feels like that deadline should be later on, but I believe this is where the deadline is. And so I was looking through all the guys that were Rule 5 eligible, that if they don't add them to the 40-man roster, and that's what you have to do. If the player's not on the 40-man roster by a certain point in his minor league career, he can be picked up in the Rule 5 draft. And that's how we got Shane Smith. That's how we got Vassell. The Rule 5 draft benefited the White Sox this year. So there are a bunch of names that have not made it to the 40-man roster. It's at 35 right now, by the way, so there is room. There are a lot of names that I recognize. Like guys that we've talked about before, guys who are parts of trades, guys that have been mentioned by Elijah Evans or James Fox from Future Sox. And I just find it interesting, the names that are popping up, like Adam Hackenberg is probably going to be eligible for somebody to go grab in the Rule 5 draft because I don't think that they're going to be like, oh yeah, we want to put him on the 40-man roster. Remember Wes Kath?
Yeah.
Remember him? That was an acquisition from Hahn, remember? Or no, that was a draft pick. Kath was a draft pick, remember?
Wes Kath was a draft pick.
And he was an early draft pick, first couple of rounds. And I remember when he got drafted that the ceiling was high and this could be the future third baseman. And he's now 23 years old, Wes Kath. And he will be available in the Rule 5 draft because they're not going to be adding him on there. But as I was going through, I was like, man, this is like a trip down memory lane. Guys that you were sitting around and you knew for some reason. Samuel Zavala. Remember, he was acquired via trade. Outfielder.
He was, I believe, part of the Cease trade, right?
I believe so, yes. And he was like one of those guys at the end. It was like, oh, he might turn into something, might not. He's going to be out there because they're not going to add him on. I think the only guy that gets added that gets protected is going to be Tanner McDougal. Because that's a guy who we hear the prospects guys come on this show and say that is a future top of the rotation type guy. He may end up as a 1 or a 2. So that's who you expect him to protect. I don't know if there's anybody else that he's going to end up protecting, but that's the guy that you expect him to say, yeah, we're going to grab that player. We're going to put that player on the 40-man roster. We're not going to let anybody touch him because we're not going to let anybody do the same thing to us that we did to whoever we took Shane Smith off of.
The Brewers.
The Brewers, who I'm sure regretted after watching his season. So yeah, but it is interesting. As a fan, and if you ever want to just have some fun, we've had them on before. Martinez is his name. He's the guy who runs the Fangraphs roster resource. Okay. And he's been on a few different times. And you go to the Fangraphs roster resource, you get to see the entire breakdown of every player in the organization and when their options come and their age and when they're eligible for Rule 5 and when that's going to run in. It's really interesting to go down the list right now and see some of these names. And it really does tell you something. The reason I'm bringing it up is it really does tell you something. It tells you that for all the hype and for all the talk about prospects, and when you get this name and somebody sits there and talks about their ceiling and where they can go, the amount of them that never pan out. There's so many of them that never pan out. So many draft picks never become anything, to the point where now these guys will be left unprotected in the Rule 5 draft.
Which doesn't mean that they're released either. Remember, it just means that these guys are able to be picked by other squads who feel like they are major league ready enough that they can put them on their roster for the entire 2026 season. So a lot of these guys, I mean, you know, they're not good enough for that. They're not players that other teams are going to look at and go, yeah, I can have this person as a member of my starting rotation, or I can have, you know, Wes Kath is not playing every day for a team next year. He's not going to ride the pine for somebody every day next year. Samuel Zavala is not ready for the majors. If he was, we'd be talking about him in a White Sox uniform because they don't have much of an outfield going into next year, especially if Luis Robert Jr. gets traded. So I'm not worried about any of these names unless, you know, like a McDougal, you sit there and you go, somebody might give this guy
I would protect him.
A major league bullpen
role.
And I would protect him. I would protect him. I would protect any of the pitchers in particular that you think somebody could stash in their bullpen.
Because that's the trick. All they got to do is keep the guy in the bullpen. All he has to do is be able to come out in low leverage situations and eat innings for a year, and they've stolen a prospect that they're trying to develop. That's all the White Sox were doing. You know, that's
right.
it.
Shane Smith was not supposed to be a member of the starting rotation. He pitched his way into that. Mike Vassell was supposed to be a guy that was hidden in the bullpen because they thought they could make him into something. And they did. They made him into Batman. Right. You know? But Gage Workman was here. He was a Rule 5 pick that was originally with the Cubs from the Tigers. And he spent, 5 days here? And the White Sox went, yeah, we see why the Cubs didn't want him. And they sent him packing. You know, it doesn't always work out. They weren't going to put him on the major league roster. I think he was injured when they picked him up. So, you know, what you're really looking for from the standpoint of all of these things is do you care enough about any of these guys to worry that whoever the bad teams are going to pick them up? And pitching is the one thing that you can do. I think position players, it's a lot harder. You don't see as many of them picked up. And from the White Sox standpoint, that's, you know, all they're looking for, all Chris Getz is looking for is there somebody else's discarded prospect who is major league ready or close enough to major league ready, or we see something between Bannister and Fuller that we think, we can do that. We can take care of that guy's whatever, and he's got enough talent to be up here and ride the pine, and then maybe by the end of the season be a contributor, or in the case of a pitcher, maybe we give them, you know, the fifth starter role if they're really good. If not, they're going to be the mop-up guy, which frankly on the White Sox, not having a big established starting rotation, mop-up guy could see more action than you really want to. But that's it. I'm not too concerned about leaving most of these guys unprotected.
It's just McDougal. That's the only guy I'm holding on to.
Just McDougal.
I think McDougal's the only guy I'm holding on to unless they have a guy where they're like, look, he's going to make it there eventually, and we don't want somebody to take him, and we got lots of room. I mean, you have 5 spots right now on your 40-man. You want to use them for other things, though, right? And that's the whole thing. And they may want to pick up somebody in the Rule 5 draft. I think that a smart baseball team at this point, they should be using at least one Rule 5 pick for one pitcher that they stash in their bullpen. If you're not doing it, I think you're making a big mistake. I think that almost is, it's almost become like it's good business to do it. I don't know so much about position players, because position players now are taking up one of those 12 or 13 spots that are not pitchers that are on your team. And what are you going to do? Just have him sit down there and hand out chewing gum? Like at some point he's going to have to get in there. And if he's not ready to play, you're ruining him. He's not getting any regular at bats. He's not developing. But a guy in a bullpen, you can keep working on. He can sit out there all year long. He can pitch side games and he can do simulated games on days off. And then he gets actual real game experience. He's going to get so much more. So like, I think the Rule 5 draft really has become pitchers. Unless some team makes an egregious mistake or is so overloaded with prospects that they're unable to protect somebody who's at the AAA level and is so close to the majors, somebody's like, I don't know. I think this guy's ready. And I think that team just has too many guys in the major league level and he's blocked. That's the only way you really find like that position player in it. But I think the White Sox would be stupid not to make sure that they made a selection in the Rule 5 draft of an arm that they thought eventually could become something for them, because there's plenty of them down there. We always talk about how like bullpens are really disposable. It's all about finding the hot guy. Yeah, that somebody who's going to just like have a great season, and then all of a sudden maybe turns it into a couple more years. Every once in a while, it turns into a whole career. A lot of times you get a guy who starts there and he has the ability to be a starter, but he's going to start out in the bullpen and he gets better. Like that's where you go with it. I think the Rule 5 draft, you want to always have room. I remember that was something that we talked about on the show a year ago at this time, that I wanted to make sure Chris Getz had room on his 40-man to make selections in the Rule 5 draft. I was more concerned about that than him protecting guys last year. So outside of McDougal, unless there's somebody that they're not telling us about, that they just love him so much they're afraid somebody's going to steal him. And I don't think there's anybody glaring that like sticks out to me. I think that's the only guy they'll end up protecting when it's all said and done this week.
To the chagrin of some of our listeners, I agree.
Damn it, Ed! By the way, it's Jason R.R. Martinez for Fangraphs.
Yes, that's right.
I know. I didn't want to say the wrong first name. So I just go, that Martinez guy. We're a professional podcast.
Mr. Martinez, if you please, sir.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found. And always on soxinthebasement.com.